Alleged Cape Town underworld figure and security boss Andre Naudé has been shot dead in Paro.
June 12, 2025, Paro, Cape Town. At 2:40 p.m., a charcoal BMW silently rolls up to an unmarked white SUV waiting at an intersection. Andre Naudé, 55, grips the steering wheel, lost in thought. Suddenly, multiple shots tear through the air. Metal shudders under the assault. Pedestrians scatter for cover. Naudé slumps forward as his trusted SUV jerks toward the curb. For a moment, everything is surreal. People scream, cars stop in confusion. By the time anyone realizes what happened, Naudé, Cape Town's so-called underworld architect, is dead at 2:40 p.m. that day. His death marks the violent end of a 3-decade criminal career that reshaped the city's underworld. Cape Town's transition out of apartheid in the early 1990s was a time of chaos and opportunity. Into this vacuum stepped Andre Naudé, who arrived on the scene not as a politician, but as muscle. He found work as a nightclub bouncer, learning the trade of enforcing order with a stern glare and a ready fist. That gritty initiation offered rare social mobility. In a city reeling from old inequities, strength and cunning became currency. By 2003, Naudé had risen far above the rank and file. He took control of Professional Protection Services, PPS, a Johannesburg-origin security company, and made it his own. It was a savvy move. Cape Town's private security sector was booming and largely unregulated. By the 2010s, South Africa employed roughly 2.7 million private security guards, dwarfing the 150,000-strong official police force. In those yawning gaps in law and order, men like Naudé thrived. He was not alone in this world. As millions of South Africans turned to private guards for a semblance of safety, unscrupulous bosses quietly set the rules behind the scenes. The stakes of business in Cape Town shifted dramatically in 2011. That November, the kingpin of nightclub security, Cyril Bika, was assassinated. Police later reported that Bika's company, Pro Access, had operated like an extortion racket with Mafia ties. When Bika's reign ended, the door swung open for rivals. Naudé, seeing his chance, forged an alliance that would define Cape Town's underworld for years to come. Within weeks of the hit, Naudé partnered with two figures he had known for years, businessman Mark Lifman and gang leader Jerome Donkie Booysen. Together they launched a new security outfit, Specialized Protection Services, SPS. SPS moved fast. In short order, they coerced roughly 200 bars and clubs across the city to use their guards and pay for their protection. For legitimate venue owners, it was a nightmare thinly disguised as business. For Naudé, it was proof of the blueprint he was building. Control the night, and you control the city's cash flows. But by early 2012, the web was unraveling. Authorities discovered SPS was never registered with the industry regulator. It was a shell. Exposed, Naudé and Lifman were hit with over 300 counts of fraud. Suddenly, the rising boss was a defendant, facing years in court. But in a system as flawed as the one he exploited, even this felt like only a delay. In the pages of South Africa's high courts, Naudé prepared for the fight of his life. The courtroom became another stage for Cape Town's drama. In 2015, after years of legal wrangling, Naudé and Lifman walked free. The judges acquitted them on all charges. It was a turning point. Behind that verdict was a realization. These men were not simple businessmen. Prosecutors had unmasked a hidden empire. Court documents would later confirm that Naudé, Lifman, and Booysen had secretly formed what police called the Brotherhood, a cabal that rigged Cape Town's nightlife in their favor. Investigators described it as a violent underworld enterprise that hid behind legitimate work. Each man had a role to play. Lifman was the strategist, a wealthy fixer with mainstream connections. Booysen ran muscle on the streets, head of the infamous Sexy Boys gang. Naudé himself was the linchpin, the middleman linking boardrooms to back alleys. In police parlance, he was the architect of their scheme, the person who could embed a criminal web within the guise of legal business. From 2015 onward, the Brotherhood put their plan into high gear. Venue owners still remember the nightly demands. Pick up the phone, or hear the boots of Booysen's men at your door. Naudé's network used businesses as fronts, not just security, but construction firms and property holdings too. Court records list Naudé as owning multiple houses in suburbs like Plattekloof and Belleville, and even luxury cars and assets seized in later investigations. He managed to balance a public face of prosperity with clandestine extortion, missing accounts, secret ledgers, deliveries of cash. The city was bribed or bullied into compliance. When an investigative reporter called the group Cape Town's hidden crime syndicate, it wasn't far from the truth. Prosecution affidavits detail their crimes. Venues that refused SPS could be firebombed or threatened. Money was laundered through front companies, and those who balked at payment ended up dead. Through intimidation and graft, they systematically divided the profits of the city's million-dollar nightlife. To those trapped under their shadow, the Brotherhood seemed untouchable. But by now, Naudé had made many enemies, and the tension was building toward a breaking point. For years, the Brotherhood's rule went largely uncontested. That ended in 2017, when a new gangster from the Cape Flats decided to challenge the old order. Nafees Modak, a figure known for bold tactics, launched what police described as a hostile takeover of Cape Town's security contracts. Modak's crew didn't ask for permission. They simply sent armed men to seize lucrative jobs at clubs and construction sites. Where Naudé's network had walked softly, Modak's gang came with weapons drawn. Violence exploded. The Brotherhood retaliated swiftly. In August 2017, a bloody message was sent that would reverberate for years. Brian Weinstein, a Dublin-based bodybuilder deeply involved in steroids and fitness supplements, had been at odds with Naudé's group. On the morning of August 2017, he was ambushed and killed near his home. Police sources allege the hit was ordered by Naudé and his lieutenants to protect their burgeoning steroid smuggling empire. Weinstein's death, a brazen daylight shooting, put every player on edge. If even an international trafficker could be executed, nowhere was safe. Even Cape Town's prisons felt the conflict. Investigators later found that the Brotherhood's influence reached into the notorious 27's prison gang. In fact, William "Red" Stevens, a 27's general who had ties to Naudé's network, was shot dead in February 2021. His murder behind bars showed that the war had no boundaries. The Brotherhood's tentacles extended into jail cells, giving them reach over gangs that controlled the townships from behind prison walls. The war widened. Longtime allies turned into enemies as Modak's influence spread. Even Jerome Booysen's own brother Colin jumped ship in 2018, defecting to Modak's side. Among gang circles, that kind of betrayal cracked loyalties to the core. From the dusty shanties of Bonteheuwel to the city's polished clubs, speculation and fear spread. Who would be the next target? In court documents, a network of insiders emerged, cousins, bodyguards, and middlemen operating under shifting alliances. To residents, it felt like old rules were gone. The enforcers themselves were being hunted. No one was immune. The courts that tried to bring justice were caught in the crossfire. The Brian Weinstein murder trial, originally set to resolve the steroid empire bloodletting, became a deadliest display of witness terror. 5 of the original 13 accused in that case have since been murdered. William "Red" Stevens, Jason Mates, Anthony Vanderwatt, Mark Lifman, and Andre Naudé. Each shooting delivered a clear message: testify, and you die. The remaining suspects cowered. Witnesses stayed home. Prosecutors warned of a systematic assassination campaign aimed at derailing their case. In court filings, a key witness, known only as Mr. X, described how the Brotherhood enforced debts with threats and bullets and held territory like medieval lords. Cape Town's gangland had taught itself a brutal new lesson. It could directly confront the justice system itself. Cape Town in the 21st century was a city of contrasts. In wealthy suburbs like Rondebosch, families sipped coffee at sidewalk cafes. An hour away, in Khayelitsha and Nyanga, almost every family touched by gang violence struggled just to survive. These townships were born of apartheid's brutal geography. Black and colored residents were forcibly moved there decades ago, concentrating poverty and swelling the ranks of the desperate. At times, unemployment in those areas topped 60%. For many young people, crime wasn't a choice as much as the only option that offered any income. Naudé and others stepped in to fill that void, offering quick cash or protection where government jobs and services were scarce. To them, signing with a gang could feel like the only escape from grinding poverty. The economic landscape made this worse. South Africa is among the most unequal nations on Earth. Cape Town epitomizes this split. The Gini index here is about 0.63. Imagine a city where a man living in the high mountain suburbs looks out over sprawling shack settlements below. That tangible gulf of wealth and despair fuels resentment and crime. When people have little faith that official institutions will help them, they look to other protectors or predators to fill the gap. In fact, one report warned that criminal networks in Cape Town exploit regulatory gaps and weak oversight in the booming private security industry. Naudé was a prime example of that warning come to life. Law enforcement itself struggled under these pressures. Public police forces were starved for resources, and corruption plagued them. In Cape Town, over 40% of city police officers are traffic cops, the lowest paid, most corruptible group. When a lower-ranking cop is assigned to serious gang crime, lack of training or the temptation of bribes can cripple any case. Investigations even revealed that senior officers had quietly sold thousands of firearms to gangsters, while promotions were often handed out for political connections rather than proven merit. And the problem wasn't just bribes. Many police stations lack even basic equipment and reliable electricity, making it nearly impossible to pursue leads. Local politicians sometimes intervened in police hiring, prioritizing loyalty over expertise. In short, the very institutions meant to protect citizens were undermined from within. For everyday Cape Townians, this meant help wasn't always coming. As one crime analyst put it, these conditions allowed figures like Naudé to operate for decades without answer. And while ordinary families turned their news on in horror at each new gangland shooting, many wondered if any promise of justice would ever come true. All these threads tangled together on that final day. As the smoke cleared on Voortrekker Road, mourners and media gathered at the scene of the assassination. Observers noticed an uncanny detail. Jerome "Donkie" Booysen stood among them, offering condolences. Later that evening, he gave a brief statement on camera, calling Naudé a friend. The underworld was stunned. These were not just criminal comrades. In many ways, they were family. And yet fate had set Naudé and his closest ally on opposite ends of a bloody spectrum. What happened next was depressingly familiar. Police and the anti-gang unit launched an investigation, but as in cases before, they hit a wall. No arrests were ever made. The same pattern replayed. Witnesses vanished, evidence dried up, and time blurred the details. In less than 4 years, the Weinstein case had seen half its accused shot dead. Now its so-called architect shared that fate. The justice system, which had promised closure to grieving families, stood empty-handed. Official statements lamented the intimidation and corruption that hamstrung the inquiry. Even after high-profile hearings and thousands of pages of testimony, the reality remained. Organized crime in Cape Town often moves in the shadows, untouchable by the very agencies meant to enforce the law. With Naudé gone, power shifted once more. News outlets warned of a new bloodbath. Cape Town's criminal landscape has entered uncharted territory, one analyst wrote. Established territories were suddenly up for grabs. Bars that once had bodyguards might now see open shootouts. Closed-door meetings might explode into betrayal. Clans on the fringes of the old empire began jockeying for position, ready to carve out their own slices of the city. As dusk settled that day, one question hung in the air. Who would fill the empty chair left by the underworld architect? The answer was ominous. Someone already was trying. In the cold light of what came after, Andre Naudé's life looks less like a legend and more like a cautionary tale. His story shows how far a single person can shape the fate of many, and how hollow that power can be. It serves as a grim illustration of a wider truth in South Africa. The way criminals have embedded themselves in society can make them feel untouchable. Naudé's ability to survive charges and scandals for over 30 years laid bare the rot beneath the surface. Court documents finally summarized it plainly. He was far from an innocent businessman. He was a linchpin in a violent underworld enterprise of extortion, money laundering, and murder. The police and courts he once evaded cannot undo the devastation left behind. Each bullet that felled Naudé echoed through the shanties and suburbs, a reminder that justice in Cape Town is still a distant promise. There are no easy heroes in this story. For every gangster who drew a last breath on cracked asphalt, there was a family in mourning. Childhoods were shattered by the gunmen of both the Weinstein and Naudé cases. Entire neighborhoods live in fear of the next explosion of violence. Those are the unseen victims, innocent bystanders, bar patrons, and desperate youths who grew up with the violent perimeters of gangdom as normal as the sunrise. Every fired bullet represented someone's father or brother taken too soon, a tragedy too familiar on Cape Town's ledger. But beyond the individual losses is the tragedy of a society still wounded by inequality and dysfunction. As analysts in the wake of Naudé's death concluded, his rise was enabled by factors that have not gone away. Economic injustice and segregation, the remnants of apartheid, continue to fracture communities. Corruption continues to poison institutions designed to protect the public. The socio-economic conditions that enabled Naudé's rise remain largely unchanged, experts note, which means similar figures will continue to emerge. In other words, unless Cape Town can tackle these root causes, another underworld boss will one day claim the title of new kingpin. Naudé liked to think of himself as an architect of Cape Town's underworld, and in a twisted way, he succeeded. He built a vast structure of fear and money out of the city's deepest fissures. But empires built on violence and greed are brittle. The structure he assembled has collapsed. Its remains a monument to human folly rather than genius. In the end, we close the book on Andre Naudé not with applause, but with a heavy stillness. The architect is dead, and what he built lies in ruins. Cape Town now faces a choice: learn from this tragedy and mend the fractures that allowed it, or watch history repeat itself. But unlearning decades of history won't happen overnight. It will take relentless work, honest policing, community uplift, and most of all, economic and social reforms that shrink the yawning gap between rich and poor. Only then can Cape Town hope to see an end to the cycle that raised figures like Naudé in the first place. For now, though, the city holds its breath as a new dawn breaks over Paro. The cost of Naudé's underworld may be tallied in broken lives and unanswered questions. Cape Town waits to see who, if anyone, will answer them.